Go to school, work hard, get a steady job, save your pennies, and above all, get out of debt.
Right, the classic formula.
Exactly. I mean, we've been fed this exact formula for financial success since, what, childhood?
Pretty much since we could walk.
Yeah. But what if every single piece of that advice is actually dangerously obsolete?
That is a wild thought.
It is, and we are so thrilled you're joining us today for this deep dive because, well, we are deconstructing a radically counterintuitive approach to wealth. We're looking at some, frankly, eye-opening source material based on an interview with Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, and it's fascinating stuff.
It really is. Our mission today is to unpack the mechanics of why playing by those traditional financial rules might, actually be a losing game.
And just to set the scope for you right out of the gate here, we are analyzing these concepts entirely impartially.
Right. Very important to note.
Because some of these ideas, they challenge the absolute bedrock of conventional financial wisdom. They can definitely feel risky or even controversial depending on your political or financial perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
So our objective isn't to take sides or tell you to go out and blindly replicate this strategy. We're just reporting on the source material.
Yeah.
We want to understand the underlying mechanics, right? We want to see how this specific wealthy mindset operates under the hood.
Yeah, and why it views conventional security as a total trap. Okay, so let's unpack this, because I think the best place to start is right at the foundation of that traditional American dream.
Yeah, let's do it.
What if the absolute most dangerous thing you can accept in life is a steady paycheck?
It sounds totally absurd to most people, right? A paycheck is the ultimate symbol of security.
Right, it pays the mortgage.
Exactly. It pays the mortgage, it keeps the lights on, it gives you that breathing room so you can actually sleep at night. To call it dangerous, well, it requires a total inversion of how we even think about risk.
It really does. And Kiyosaki uses this incredible story from his own life to illustrate that inversion in the interview.
Wow.
It's from his time working for Xerox in Puerto Rico.
Oh, right. The final day story.
Yeah. So it comes down to his very last day at the company. And his boss hands him his final check. But it's not just, his standard salary. It's a bonus check for about $30,000.
Which is a huge amount of money.
Massive. But he makes sure to emphasize that this check is heavily taxable, which is, it's a crucial detail we will definitely get into in a minute.
Right, the tax piece is huge.
So anyway, he's holding this massive check, and instead of just being thrilled, he's actually really disturbed by it.
Yeah.
And a colleague named John walks up, looks at him, and just says, you're going to be back because you're going to fail.
Wow. Talk about supportive colleague.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki essentially looks at him and says, you failed and you came back. I'm going to fail and I'm never coming back.
He makes a definitive break from the safety net right there.
He does. And, the way I've been conceptualizing this whole anti-paycheck philosophy from the source is that a steady salary is essentially like a financial subscription service.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, because you get the incredible comfort of that monthly delivery, right? It's reliable. You know exactly when it's going to hit your account.
Right.
But in exchange for that comfort, you are completely trading away your ultimate earning ceiling. And you are locked into the terms and conditions of your employer.
A financial subscription service. I really like that. Because the core philosophy here is that having a safety net, whether that's parents you can run home to or a guaranteed corporate job you can fall back on, it keeps a person fundamentally comfortable.
And comfort doesn't exactly force growth, does it?
Exactly. It doesn't force growth at all.
Yeah.
Taking away the paycheck is a lot like taking the training wheels off a bicycle.
Oh, right.
As long as you have the training wheels on, you don't actually have to learn how to balance. The safety mechanism just does all the work for you.
That makes so much sense.
Right. So when you remove that guaranteed money, you face this really stark test of character. Do you become a crook to survive? Or do you become hungrier, smarter, and just more adaptable?
Yeah.
The argument is that the absence of the paycheck is the very environment you need to learn financial balance.
That brings up a major pushback question for me, though, because the interview takes a highly aggressive stance on traditional schooling, too.
It does, yeah.
It connects schooling directly to this reliant, employee mindset. So is the suggestion that we should just scrap the educational system entirely?
Well, no, the critique in the source material isn't that education itself is inherently bad, or that, nobody should ever learn anything in a classroom.
Okay.
The argument is that the specific educational model we use is fundamentally obsolete. It was built for an industrial era that just doesn't exist anymore. And the reasoning provided is rooted in Moore's law.
Ah, Moore's law. That's the technological principle about computing power, right?
Usually, yes. It generally states that computing power, and in this broader context, the total volume of human information doubles roughly every 18 months.
18 months. Wow.
Right. Because the pace of information is moving so rapidly, by the time a student spends 4 or more years in the university system, a vast amount of the technical knowledge they just paid a premium to acquire is already out of date.
So the world has essentially moved on while they were sitting in a lecture hall.
Exactly.
There is this really vivid analogy in the interview that captures this perfectly. It says, we go to the supermarket and we always check the expiration date on our milk.
Right.
Like, we wouldn't dream of drinking something that expired 3 weeks ago, but most people do not check the expiration date on their brains.
That's a brutal way to put it, but yeah.
We just assume the foundational knowledge we acquired a decade ago is still perfectly fresh and applicable to today's economy.
And applying those expired rules to a modern financial landscape is exactly what keeps people trapped in a cycle of frustration. They are playing a game that ended decades ago.
Okay, so if traditional schooling is expiring and steady paychecks are basically financial training wheels holding you back, what is the actual mechanism the wealthy use to generate momentum?
Right. The million-dollar question.
Literally, because to understand that, we have to look at why this philosophy claims that savers are losers, which is just, it goes against everything my grandparents taught me.
Completely. To understand why saving money is viewed as a losing strategy in this framework, we actually have to look back at a historical pivot point, the year 1971.
1971. Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that. What actually happened in 1971?
So this was when President Richard Nixon officially took the United States off the gold standard.
Right.
Before 1971, the U.S. dollar was backed by physical gold. You couldn't just create money infinitely, right? It was tied to a finite physical asset.
Which kept it grounded.
Exactly. But when Nixon removed that peg, money fundamentally changed. It became fiat currency. It literally became an instrument of debt.
Wow.
The government gained the ability to just print money out of thin air to fund its obligations.
And when you can print trillions of dollars at will, it creates this hidden mechanism that just drains the average person's wealth.
Yep. And that mechanism is inflation. Think of the economy like a pizza.
Okay, I like pizza.
Right. If you have an 8-slice pizza and suddenly you slice it into 16 pieces, you haven't magically created more food.
No, you just have smaller slices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've made every individual slice smaller and less filling. When a central bank prints trillions of dollars, the purchasing power of every single dollar already sitting in your bank account shrinks.
So the system inherently punishes the middle class, who are basically just hoarding cash.
Yes.
So if inflation is running at, say, 5 or 6%, and your savings account is paying you, maybe 1% if you're lucky?
Right, if you're lucky.
You are literally losing purchasing power every single day your money sits in that bank. You are moving backward. Cash, as the interview puts it, is quote-unquote trash.
Which is why the traditional advice of save your pennies is considered so dangerously obsolete. But here's the thing. Inflation is only half of the trap.
Oh, right.
The other half is the tax system. The tax code aggressively penalizes people who work for a traditional W-2 paycheck, regardless of how large that paycheck actually is.
The comparison of the doctor versus the entrepreneur from the source material illustrates this brilliantly.
Yeah, that part really stands out.
So there's this scenario detailed in the interview about a highly educated doctor who is celebrating because he finally grossed $1 million in a single year.
A huge milestone.
Absolutely. But then he's asked how much he actually kept after taxes. And the doctor admits he paid $750,000 in taxes.
Which is just painful to even hear.
Leaving him with a net of roughly $400,000. Now, I know, the math there is a little fuzzy from the source.
Yeah, $1 million minus $750 would be $250.
Right. But whether he took home $250,000 or $400,000, the underlying reality is exactly the same. His take-home pay was absolutely gutted.
Gutted.
Meanwhile, Kiyosaki says he makes $1 million and he keeps the entire $1 million.
That disparity is what shocks most people who, spent years playing by the rules in the educational system.
Let's look at the mechanics of that, though. Because how is it legally possible that the entrepreneur keeps the whole $1 million while the doctor just gets demolished by taxes?
It comes down to understanding what the IRS taxes most aggressively. The absolute highest taxed form of income is earned income.
Meaning the money you trade your time and labor for.
Exactly. The fundamental rule of the wealthy in this specific framework is that they do not work for earned income.
Wait, if they don't work for money, how are they getting $1 million?
They acquire assets, specifically income-producing real estate, and they do it using debt.
Sure.
This is where the strategy known as the 4-to-1 step-up comes into play.
Okay, let's walk through exactly how that works in practice, because I think this is where people get lost.
Sure. Imagine you generate $1 million through a business venture.
Yeah.
If you take that as a personal salary, you're going to lose a massive chunk to taxes, just like the doctor. So instead, you keep it within a corporate structure, and you use that $1 million as a down payment on a real estate asset. Let's say an apartment complex.
Oh, okay, an apartment complex.
You put your $1 million down, and a bank loans you $4 million. You now control a $5 million asset, using mostly the bank's money.
Well, wait, pause right there. You just took on $4 million in debt.
I did?
I have a standard mortgage, and it stresses me out. Why on earth would I want the stress of owing a bank $4 million?
Because there is a vast fundamental difference between consumer debt and asset debt.
Okay, explain that.
Consumer debt, like using credit cards to buy a flat-screen TV or, a new car that pays for things that lose value and generate zero income.
Right.
That debt relies completely on your personal W-2 paycheck to be serviced. If you lose your job, you can't pay for the car.
That makes sense.
Asset debt, on the other hand, buys something that produces cash flow. In the case of the apartment complex, the tenants are paying rent every single month. That rental income covers the expenses, pays the property taxes, and it services that $4 million bank loan.
And crucially, the debt itself is not taxed.
Exactly. When the bank wired you that $4 million to buy the building, the IRS doesn't view that as income. It's a loan. It has to be paid back.
Right.
So you basically receive $4 million in purchasing power entirely tax-free. Furthermore, the tax code actually rewards you for owning that building.
Oh, because of depreciation?
Yes. You get to deduct the interest payments on the loan, and you get to claim depreciation on the physical building itself, which creates these massive paper losses that completely offset the rental income you're actually receiving.
So just to recap this, the tenants pay down your multi-million-dollar loan for you. The tax code shields your cash flow through paper losses like depreciation, and the asset ideally goes up in value over time.
You nailed it. The entire system is built to reward leverage and investment while heavily penalizing those who simply trade time for a salary.
And the scale at which this leverage can be applied is just staggering.
Oh, it really is.
There is a specific example in the interview where Kiyosaki talks about refinancing $300 million in debt.
$300 million.
Yeah.
Huh.
He took his interest rate from 5% down to 2.5%. And by simply renegotiating the cost of the money he had already borrowed, his monthly debt payments just plummeted.
Wow.
The rent coming in from all his properties stayed exactly the same, but his expenses dropped massively. The difference is just instant, tax-free cash flow pouring into his accounts every single month, all because the cost of holding his debt went down.
It is a purely mechanical mastery of how capital flows. It really is.
I think hearing about $300 million in debt probably induces a cold sweat for the average listener, though.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about why most people couldn't stomach that, even if they decided to quit their corporate job tomorrow. Because there is a profound difference between simply being self-employed and actually operating with an entrepreneurial mindset.
This is perhaps the most common trap people fall into when they try to escape the traditional paycheck. The interview points out a startling statistic. Out of 28 million small business owners in America, roughly 24 million are non-employee entrepreneurs.
Meaning they are one-person shops, solo operators.
Exactly.
They made the leap because they thought they were escaping the system, right? They thought working for themselves made them a wealthy entrepreneur.
Right, but the reality is that the self-employed often pay the absolute highest taxes of all.
Because they have to pay both the employer and employee sides of the payroll tax.
Yes. They didn't build a business system that leverages debt and minimizes taxes. They just bought themselves a heavily taxed job with a lot more stress and zero safety net.
They changed their title on LinkedIn, but they didn't change the rules they play by.
Exactly. They are still fundamentally trading their personal time and labor for earned income. They are still operating with an external focus, basically reacting to the market rather than building an internal system.
Which brings us to a really powerful philosophy discussed in the interview. It's derived from the inventor and theorist Bucky Fuller. It's this concept of the plural at minimum two.
Right. Plural at minimum two.
Meaning there are always two sides to any equation.
Always. Applied to wealth and economics, it means recognizing that there is an external economy,
Mm-hmm.
the macro conditions of the world, interest rates, government policies, the stock market,
Right.
and then there's an internal economy, which is your personal financial reality, your asset column, and most importantly, your mindset.
I want to play devil's advocate for the listener here, though, because the philosophy states that there is, quote, no such thing as a bad economy.
It does say that.
And I have a really hard time with that. I mean, is it fair to look at someone who just got laid off, whose industry is collapsing, and who is struggling to feed their family and tell them there's no such thing as a bad economy?
It is a brutally tough love perspective, for sure. But the core of the argument here is really about locus of control. The philosophy suggests that if you believe the external economy is bad, it is only because your personal internal economy is weak.
Because it's entirely reliant on that external world.
Exactly.
Let's ground that in a tangible example.
Okay, let's look at a traditional employee. Their internal economy consists of one single point of failure, their job.
Right.
They rely on one customer, their boss, to buy their labor every 2 weeks. When a recession hits and the company downsizes, that single point of failure breaks. Their entire economy collapses. So to them, the recession is a world-ending disaster.
Because they outsourced all their security to an external entity.
Precisely. Now look at a true entrepreneur who operates a portfolio of income-producing assets. They don't rely on a single W-2 paycheck. If a macro recession hits, they don't lose their income stream because people still need a place to live, they still pay rent. In fact, to an entrepreneur with strong internal control and access to capital, a bad external economy is actually a massive sale.
Oh, because asset prices drop.
Right. Real estate becomes cheaper, and they can acquire more wealth at a discount. They don't fear a recession at all. They actually use it.
It's a complete psychological shift. And the interview makes an incredibly profound observation here. It says people who are terrified of losing their jobs generally end up losing them.
Yeah, a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Because the fear basically manifests the reality. Their energy is spent trying to cling to this external safety net rather than building internal capability. Therefore, the very first job of an entrepreneur isn't to incorporate an LLC or design a logo or even secure a loan. The very first job is to build control inside their own mind.
The internal willpower and financial intelligence are the primary assets. Everything else just flows downstream from that.
Right.
When someone with a weak internal mindset makes a mistake or faces a financial setback, they look for external comfort. They blame the government, they blame the economy, they get depressed. But when an entrepreneur with a strong internal economy takes a hit, they view it strictly as data. A failure just means there was a mechanic they didn't quite understand yet. They analyze it, they adapt, and they stand back up smarter. The external conditions do not dictate their internal reality.
Okay, so let's unpack all of this and look at the bigger picture.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really looking at here is the root cause of the widening gap between the wealthy and everyone else. It is not simply a matter of who happens to have more dollars in a bank account. It is about two groups of people operating under fundamentally different rule books.
The traditional middle-class rulebook is optimized for security. It relies on the steady paycheck, the academic credentials, and the savings account.
Right.
But the mechanics of the economy fundamentally shifted in 1971. Because of fiat currency and aggressive taxation on earned income, those very mechanisms of security are now designed to quietly erode your wealth over time.
Meanwhile, the wealthy rulebook is optimized for freedom. Instead of saving a depreciating currency, they leverage tax-free debt. Instead of working for a highly taxed salary, they acquire assets that generate cash flow.
Yeah.
And, most importantly, they cultivate an unshakable internal economy that renders the chaos of the external world almost irrelevant to their long-term success.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? You might be, finishing up your commute or your workout thinking, well, this is a fascinating mechanical breakdown, but I am certainly not going to go out and borrow $4 million to buy an apartment building tomorrow.
And that is completely fine.
Yeah, you don't have to. The immediate application of this deep dive isn't about rushing into massive debt. The application is about taking a hard, honest audit of your own internal economy.
Exactly.
You have to ask yourself some uncomfortable questions. Are you operating with an expired mindset? Are you relying on financial rules that were written for an industrial world that frankly no longer exists? Are you letting the fear of the external economy dictate your choices because you have a single point of failure in your income?
The principle of the plural, at minimum two, applies to every choice you make going forward. You can choose to maintain the reliant employee mindset, hoping the external world takes care of you. Or you can begin to cultivate the analytical, entrepreneurial mindset, really learning how debt, taxes, and assets actually function, regardless of whether you even own a business right now.
It's a fundamental lens through which you view risk and reward. Think about it. We spend our whole lives trying to build a safety net to catch us if we fall. We want the guarantees, the benefits, the predictable, comfortable path.
We all do.
But what if the ultimate security isn't having a net at all, but finally learning how to fly without one? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration of the mechanics of wealth gave you an entirely new perspective to chew on.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep questioning the rules and keep checking the expiration dates on those ideas. Take care, everyone.